one-on-one candidate interviews here on KHUM. Last hour, we talked with Elon Furpo. This hour, we're talking with Maggie Fleming, both running, of course, for District Attorney for Humboldt County. Thanks for coming in, Maggie. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Cliff. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So, I guess one thing we need to clear up from the start. When you first entered the race, we were talking about this a little off air. A lot of people thought that you were or were related to the former mayor of Eureka.
That's correct.
Nancy Fleming, but
Yes.
you were not.
I am not, and she spells her name with 2 M's in Fleming, and mine only has 1.
There you go. So that's cleared up. Now let's get a little background on who you are.
Thank you. I grew up in Oakland. My parents were the children of immigrants from Ireland, and they also grew up in Oakland. And then my father, who was a laborer, joined a union and ultimately became a business agent. And he handled a representation for a lot of truckers for problems that they were having. And specifically, as a kid, one case that I remember is he led a strike against a company because they were making the truck drivers clean out their tankers when they reached their destination. And a lot of them were having some really serious physical problems. They weren't provided the equipment they needed. They weren't being told what were the chemicals in the tankers. And it was something my dad talked to me about a lot, about the importance of always recognizing how important it is to stand up for something and to also be ready if necessary to, do the right thing as part of your job. So I was encouraged always to sort of think about that as my goal in looking for a profession. And my folks had a janitorial business at night that we all worked at so that we could hopefully go to college. And so I got to go to UC Davis, and I worked as a janitor there too. And then I went to Santa Clara Law School, and I had internships in both the public defender and the district attorney's office to sort of help me decide, at which table I wanted to sit at in the courtroom. And so I decided prosecution. I had an internship as a prosecutor after law school, and then joined the Contra Costa County DA's office, where I worked for 7.5 years. And it was a great office. I think what I liked best about it was the experience level of so many, so that every time I started a new division, a new type of case, there was someone there who had tried literally dozens of those cases who could help me, elder abuse or child abuse or rape cases. And that was really, really helpful to me and to help me make, more effective choices as a trial attorney. And then my husband, who's a fishicologist, took a job here in Humboldt County in 1993. And I got the job with Humboldt County DA's office and moved here in January 1994. So I was able to move in with my husband, which is, a good thing for any marriage. And then I worked in the DA's office for the next 18 years, handling all of the violent and serious cases. I was the director of the Child Abuse Services team for 2 years. And that was a vertical assignment, and vertical means that you handle the case from start to finish. You handle the charging decision, and you stay with the case all the way through. And that was a grant-funded position, which is critical for those types of cases, and I would work really hard to make sure that returned. For 4 years, I was assigned the Drug Task Force, and again, that was total vertical prosecution. Great opportunity for me. I learned a lot about some of the issues that we've seen in recent years with the large marijuana grows, the environmental damage, and I made that part of the plea and sentencing cleanup and mitigation. And then 2 years ago, I received an offer to take a position with county council, and I did that. That's been a great opportunity too for me for learning and expanding my career. And one of the assignments that I have is the conservatorships for the entire county. So I do all the trials for the county of Humboldt dealing with people who have very serious mental health problems.
Okay. What would your top priorities be in the office if you were elected DA?
My number one priority would be to build an office that the public has trust in, and to regain the trust and confidence in the criminal justice system. In addition to that, I would work hard to mentor the attorneys and to help them as they move through the different challenges of different assignments. I would also work really hard to collaborate with other county departments and non-profit agencies. That's something I've really learned a lot about handling the conservatorship caseload. There are so many departments and programs out there. And as DA, you're always looking at what's the right outcome, what's the just outcome for any given case, for the victims, for the community, as well as for the defendant. And being aware of options and treatment and programs that we could be using to make better choices. Our goal should always be to reduce those who are the recidivists to see if we can be more proactive in reducing crime, not just dealing with it after the fact. So, and then of course every candidate will tell you we have to build the number of attorneys in the office back up, and obviously I'd work on that. I've worked on grant applications for county council. That's something I do a significant amount of time on, so I'm very familiar with that process. And I would work because every DA office, just like a lot of county offices, is expected to get funding from outside of the county, from outside of the general fund, to support the programs and positions that it has in the department.
So what would you do differently from the current administration regarding policy and operation?
Number one, I would be much more involved in oversight and overview of the cases. In every DA's office I've ever worked in, there is supervision of the charging decisions and then the outcomes. And I think that's a really important piece that we've lost. What I see is, and I think it's really important for the public to understand too, what the DA's office does, because I realize as I've gone around, a lot of people aren't completely familiar with it. And that is that police departments and other regulatory agencies look at criminal or other types of violations. And then they do the investigation, and then they submit those reports and the evidence to the DA's office. So it's sort of a mistake when people say, oh, the police charged someone. The police investigate the activity. It's up to the DA to make the charging decision. And that's a critical first step. You have to be really aware of what a case is, what the record is when you're making those decisions. In Contra Costa County, you never charged a case until you had tried a number of them, because trial is how you learn what you can actually prove in a courtroom. And that's really the ethical responsibility. You cannot charge someone with a crime unless you can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt to 12 jurors. That's the ethical standard. You can't charge them otherwise. So having that foundation is really critical. And I have over 120 trials based upon over 25 years as a prosecutor. So I have that experience and foundation and knowledge that's critical to be making the appropriate decisions and choosing the right outcome. So I would be very involved daily in the overview of cases, the evaluation of cases, and supervising the decision making by those who are, also filing cases. And I would be available to everyone in the office to assist in making trial decisions, but also in discussing the outcome.
Now, of course, not all cases go to trial. In fact, the vast majority are plea bargained. But there have been some very high-profile plea bargains that have happened here in Humboldt County. What's your policy? What would your policy be regarding plea bargains?
My policy would be to follow the law. Penal Code Section 1192.6, as well as the California Constitution, really outlines the duty of a prosecutor. The key part, and it's sort of common sense, but unfortunately it had to be codified and then also in the Constitution for it to be followed. It really is all about complete transparency. So when you're negotiating a plea, even though maybe you discuss it out in the hall, ultimately, when you're in the courtroom, you are required by law to state on the record the reasons that you are negotiating the plea and the reasons you are determining this is the appropriate sentence that you're recommending to the court. The California Constitution, in addition to that, requires that the victims be notified, that the victims be a part of the procedure, that they be involved in every step. And those are the critical policies that I would require of every prosecutor in my office. Because unless you have that public record and complete transparency, the public really doesn't have confidence in the decisions being made. And why I also think the oversight is important is because then you have equal treatment by all of the prosecutors in each of the departments. Otherwise, what you can have is perhaps someone in one courtroom who says, oh, okay, I'll give you this deal. But opposite, the hall, there's someone who's saying, oh, no, for that crime, I'm going to require you plead to this. And by having sort of that critical oversight and overview by the elected DA, the person who's responsible for all the decisions in the office, you have consistency, and I believe that's what's really critical for justice.
You're saying that has not been followed?
No, I didn't see that when I was in the office, and I don't believe it's in place at this time. It's more the ability of each individual prosecutor to be making decisions. And for some, for a lot of the standard cases, once you sort of have the policies in place for what you think's appropriate, they don't need to check in for all of that. I mean, they're qualified attorneys. Most of them are, really aware of a lot of the facts and issues. But for a lot of the serious and violent cases, you want consensus. You want those involved, who are trying those cases to be talking to the DA and to be talking to others in the office. It should be something that's reached, by people who have knowledge about the case, to be making those sorts of decisions as a group so that you have consistency.
What are the types of cases that you think should be really going to trial?
Priority always has to be the violent and serious cases. And that's historically always been true in every DA's office I've worked in. And then the next step is to always evaluate, and I don't want to make it sound like they're low level, the nuisance crimes, but they are the people who really tear at sort of our daily lives, the vandals, the burglars, the people who are breaking in, auto windows and stealing stereos. And those are the people that you have to really carefully watch, sort of make an analysis, the people who are the real repeat offenders, to sort of peel them off. And if they're not willing to plead to the appropriate term, then you have to try those cases.
Of course, marijuana is a big part of Humboldt County, a big part of our economy, and probably a big part of the criminal justice system as well. How would your office handle cases against growers, sellers, and users?
Right. So as part of the drug task force, I saw for 4 years some of those issues. The focus always has to be on the ones who are truly damaging our society. And frankly, with us moving towards legalization, my goal would be to hopefully be part of the process, writing the legislation, because I think what it needs to address that's so important to our community is the environmental damaging grows, the grows that are on public lands, as well as the trespass grows, because those are the ones that are damaging our community here so dramatically. And in fact, I've met with the Mendocino County DA, and I've got the endorsement also of the Shasta County and the Trinity County DA, because I'm hoping that these 4 counties can sort of band together and have a bigger voice when we go to our legislators and sort of discuss what we think the marijuana legislation should really look like. I also always was involved in and tried some of the cases that involved the home invasion, because those really need to be addressed as well. The victims, whether or not they're growing marijuana or selling marijuana, people should not be coming through their front door with guns and shooting them. And that's something we really always have to target.
So you mentioned some endorsements. Let's talk a little bit about that. Who's endorsing your campaign?
I have a really widespread, from locally Ferndale, I have Sally Tanner and Pat Hofstetter, which I really appreciated. I have Jimmy Smith. But then I just have a lot of individuals throughout the county. I've lived and worked here over 20 years. And so I know people I've volunteered in a lot of groups. I'm on the board with Key TV, and I've been active with League of Women Voters, as well as my daughter's 16, and I've been on the school board and on the athletic board at her high school. So I have sort of a wide-ranging group of endorsers and supporters. And I think that's really important. What I said in my kickoff speech was I'd like to take the politics out of the DA's office. And I think that's really important because it's a nonpartisan position, and it should be. Crime affects all of us. It doesn't matter, what political party, what socioeconomic group you're in, or any of those other sort of ways that we stratify society. It affects us all. And my goal is, and what I've tried to do with my campaign, is to draw from the entire community. And that's what I've done. And that's who I've seen, support me and endorse me.
So, of course, campaigns run on money. So, yeah. Where is your campaign contributions coming from?
So my husband and I contributed significantly to the campaign, not as a loan. I just put the money in. And then my one brother and my mother-in-law. So those have been our biggest contributors. And then dropping down from that, the next biggest contributor I had for $2,500 was the Humboldt County Deputy Sheriff's Association. And then below that, I've had some attorneys who have given me significant sums. But primarily what I've received funding from is from literally hundreds of people who have sent me $10 and $20 and $50 on up to $100, $200, or $500. And my goal has been to make it very, very clear to everyone, that the contributions I so much appreciate, and I think it's amazing that people have done this, but that everyone knows that I have this breadth of support, and that no one expects anything in return for their contributions. I'm completely independent.
Very good. Well, we are unfortunately out of time, but I'll give you the last 15 seconds or so to wrap up our interview.
Great, thanks. I would invite listeners to go to my website, electmaggiefleming.com. There are testimonials on the website from jurors and social workers and people that I've known, judges, for the 20 years that I've been here, and I think that speaks to what I will do for the DA's office.
All right.
And
Very
thank
good.
you, Cliff.
Maggie Fleming, thanks for coming in.